Let's review Viltrox Ninja 30B 300 watt bicolor LED light. This is ArtIsRight. Before we start, subscribe if you're new and hit on the bell icon so you'll be notified every time I upload cool new videos like this. Full disclosure, Viltrox sent me this unit to do review. All the opinions you're about to hear are going to be my own. I want to point out the Viltrox name. Sometimes you will see this brand, sometimes you will see WeLight. They are technically the same brand. In fact, the app on the phone that you use to control this particular product is WeLight Pro app, which, by the way, I think their app is really awesome now that I have a chance to test this for multiple generations, and I'm going to share that with you a little bit later on. Before we get in to talk about what comes with this light, what I think about it, I want to briefly mention that there are two models for this particular light. There's a Ninja 30, which has a fixed color output of 5600 Kelvin, and there is a Ninja 30B. B stands for bicolor, that enables you to go in and change the color output between 2800 Kelvin to 6800 Kelvin. The maximum output for this light is 300 watts, which is really quite plenty, and there's definitely a lot to talk about that. Now, if I would have to sum up Viltrox, I would put it this way. If I don't own continuous studio lights already, I would highly consider their product because a few reasons. Number one, they are priced extremely competitively on the market. Take a look at their product and find another competitor product of a similar range and output for these lights. You're going to find that their price is definitely going to give you more value, more bang for the buck. So that's something that I like about their product. Now, this being a lighting product, the lighting quality definitely does matter, and they have some claim on their website. For example, CRI is greater than 95 and TLCI greater than 97. I was able to verify these claims using my Sekonic color meter, and that's absolutely true. So you are definitely getting a great color rendition out of these lights. And thirdly, what I really like about their products in general is that they always come with these extra accessories. They're just little things that comes in the kit, but it enables you to mount all these controller units, the power adapter, the power brick, whatever that might be, to the light stand. Getting things off the floor, that's the key thing, and they always come with those. And this is something that I really like. All right, jumping into the lighting itself. What you get is pretty much this light. You get the reflector, you get the cover for the LED, and it comes with the power brick along with the mount for the light stand, which, like I said, I think is a really key thing to have, and also a power cord. What's interesting about this unit overall is that Viltrox redesigned this a little bit. In other previous generation of product that I've tested from them, they have a separate ballast controller unit, and this unit on the very top itself is just a light. This one, what they have done is integrate the control for the light pretty much right into the back of a unit, and what you simply do is plug in this XLR type connector to the back of it, and that brings power pretty much to the device. So this is the power brick. It is quite hefty, but you know, you do need a lot of power for these. And like I said, in control and everything has been integrated in. Now, before we talk about that a little bit further, some of the pros and cons of that, I want to quickly talk about this lighting overall. The chassis itself is made out of aluminum. I believe this front part for this particular model is made out of metal, which is really great to see because it has to go through these type of lock and unlock all day long. So having something that is metal to really hold the tension for this is something that I really like. And as I mentioned, it comes with a reflector. This is a Bowen mount type, and I was able to test this with my lighting accessories that I have in the studio, and this Bowen mount does fit with all those lighting adapters and rings and everything just fine. The previous generation that I've tested, the Ninja 200, it didn't fit some of my adapters, which was rather disappointing. Anyway, we have a heatsink for the LED right there. This is the metal ring for the Bowen mount, and on the back part, the controllers, I mean, it's all integrated back there. This, however, is plastic, so one little thing on that one. There is a tighten knob here. This enables you to go in and really tighten up the light and so forth. And you just pretty much have this aluminum U-stand here for the light, or this is pretty much the light stand mount for this LED. And interestingly enough, when it comes to the product, you don't really have to do any type of pairing on your phone. You download the app, and it automatically sees the light within the range and so forth. I think that's really awesome because some of the other lights that I have, you have to go in and enable and so forth and link up with Bluetooth first. It is a lot of trouble to really go through that. I like this because it just works right away. All right, so let's turn the light on because I have a few thoughts about this. So So this is the light on. You have pretty much two dials there. You can dial this up or down. This is going to change the intensity, and the other one is going to change pretty much the color temperature output, particularly for this B unit one. Now, if you're using the phone app or if you're using this particular remote, there are ways to go in and really predefine the light and just tap things very easily instead of having to go through all of these dials. So that's one thing you can do. Now, there is quite a hefty fan in here, and the air does, blow from the bottom and it vents up, obviously because heat does flow up. So this makes a lot of sense. But the one thing that I do note is as follows. So we can turn off the fan or really have the fan run at a slower variable speed. And with this, you're allowed to control the light up to between 0 and 20%. However, I do hear the fan running very lightly, and it's not the smoothest running fan, and you do hear a little bit more cavitation from the fan. And when you enable it fully, you can now bring the light to up to 100%. Personally, I would just leave it running fully. I wouldn't even cap the fan because, like I said, the cavitation, it does introduce a little bit of sound into it. As far as controlling the unit itself, you can change the channel and the group, and this allows for quite a bit of extensibility because there are multiple channels that you can really set this to, and even more groups that you can really sub-dial these in. So you can have multiple different lights controlling different areas, and that's something that, like I said, I'm using their product a little bit more now in my studio, and I really love about their product. So what you get are the different color mode functions that you can press on back there. This is CCT, continuous light output. So there's also the different effects that you can do. But personally for me, what I would generally recommend is to not really do this from the lighting because it is a lot of work. I would generally do this from the phone app, which I'm going to do a share screen in a little bit. And as you just saw there, pretty much my phone just linked up with this light, and we'll do some more demo with the phone app on the screen as well. This way you can see it. But before we talk about that, I want to quickly mention something that I talked about in the very beginning, that the integration for this light itself is control from the back of unit. Now, this can be a good and a bad thing. The somewhat downside to this is there is a slight weight increase to this. So if you want a lighter lighting to go up higher, which does make sense, that is one of the slight downside to it. The other thing is adjustability. If this is up high and it is angling down, well, guess what? Without the remote app or without the remote control, somebody needs to climb up and, adjust the light, or what they need to do is bring the lighting down, which changes the position of the light, which is even less ideal. So those are some slight downside, but what they really do make up for it, I think their app is really awesome. And that is one of the ways that they get around. And personally for me, I like this package overall because it reduces the number of items that I need to carry on set with me, particularly when I'm using continuous light. I don't need a separate power adapter. I don't need a separate ballast control. It's all integrated here. So I have the power adapter, I have the light, and I am pretty much ready to go. Now, one more thing that I forgot to mention is that this light does not come with a carrying case, unlike many other LED lights that I have unpacked in the past. So if you're gonna use this on location, you need to provide your own carrying case. For me, that's not really a big deal because the lighting that I have in the studio just moves around in the studio anyway. They don't really get taken on location that much, and I have a separate kit to take on location. But this is one of those things where if I need to take this on location, I guess I'll use one of the case from the lighting that I have in the studio. But this is something for you to be aware of. All right, so the next demonstration, what I'm gonna do is launch the WeLight Pro app to just demonstrate this. And I already have the group and everything set, so this on the app itself is already set to channel 2, and I can just turn it on, just like that. I can control different groups, turning them on and off. You can see right there. I don't have that many groups right now, so I'm not gonna really worry about it, but I can, for example, turn group A off, and I can have other lighting set to group B, C, and everything, so I don't have to constantly go in and change the channel. Now, you can see that there are up to 19 channels and 6 groups. Start to do those combination, you have many ways to really control this light. And like I said, the app is really awesome because I did not pair anything beforehand. I just literally download the app and it links right away. This is something great about their product that I really enjoy. In the app itself, you can change the language. It says follow the system, so we are going to do that. But pretty much you have different ways of controlling the light. For example, this is the CCT. I can definitely pull the brightness up all the way, which is way too much, so I'm gonna really just bring this down. I can change the color temperature output, so this is 2500 Kelvin. even though it says it's supposed to be spec at 28, interesting enough, it's showing 25, and this is going up to 85. So these are not really going to be reflecting the true color of this quite as much because the range is a little bit more limited. And this app, that's the one I would say slight downside to this app, is that they have a tendency to make the app a little bit more generic across multiple different product lines, and certain things don't apply. For example, I can go in and dial, for example, the tint between green and magenta, and nothing changes on the light at all because this is technically a bicolor. You can only just change the color temperature. Now, within the range though, I can go in and choose the preset: 3000, 4000, 5200, 55, 6,000, 7,000. So there's many things you can do. What I also find interesting is they have redesigned this app and made it more of like a pseudo iPhone app in a way, where if you tap on that grid in the bottom there, it brings up extra function. There's HSL, which is not going to do anything to this light whatsoever, so that really doesn't matter. There's the RGB, which you can go and change, for instance, the whiteness a little bit, and you can change in some of the values, but it's really just going in there and just dialing in pretty much essentially the luminance or the power output of this, and it's not really changing the red, green, and blue combination quite as much as you think it does. So I'm going to go back to CCT there, and we're going to really lower this intensity down because I'm really just blowing everything up in the studio. All right. Beyond this, you can also do XY coordinate if you really want to, and I think these are some things that work with certain light. There's color shift you can do. Now, this is something that I find rather interesting. There is a special effect, and they made this a little bit easier. For example, I can say to do flame, and it's going on and off right now. You can see it kind of looks like a flame. I can do candlelight. I can do bursts, so it will automatically pop there. So there's different ways you can do. I can even do CCT loop, which is going to go from warm to dark, and I can change the intensity and so forth from this. Interestingly enough, the controller also has Chinese integrated in, so I think there's a slight bug in the app. It's one of those where if you're only paying this much for the light, there's not a lot you can expect, but based on what I'm seeing so far, this is a pretty good app integration. So personally for me, I am super excited by this. Now, this last one, my scene, it's the scene that you have to go in and pre-program. I don't have anything set for that, so I didn't do anything. But we're going to go back here, and I'm going to set the light to 5500 Kelvin. And we're going to set the color output right now at 10%. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to briefly turn off my key light that I have in the studio so that we have no contamination. And I'm going to use my Zirconic C800 color spectrometer to pretty much, or spectromaster, to do the light reading on this. Now that I have everything set up to do lighting tests, I have set the light output to 5500 Kelvin at 10% output. So what I want to test first of all is to really see when we are at a lower percentage output, do we get color temperature shift or not? This is something that happens in many LEDs, so we're going to test that out, and we do get quite a bit of change. So this is showing 5500 Kelvin. What I'm getting right now is 5271, so it is off by quite a bit on this one, although the CRI value is still 97.2, so it's fairly good, and the TLCI is 98, so we are still getting great value on that. Let's see where is the number where we're going to get a little bit more accurate color output. Let's do it at 20%. So at 20%, this is now reading 5456, much closer to the actual value, and that's what we want to see. TLCI still at 98. Let's go up to 25 and see if there's any variation. 5450, a little bit better. Now, usually within plus minus 100, you're not going to see that much of. What I'm going to do next is at 50, and let's see where we are on this one. So at 50, we are measuring at 5414. There are some slight fluctuations when it comes to this, but it's still within the plus minus 100, which for the most part, if you really consider the price you're really paying for this light, I would say that this is definitely more than reasonable, and this is getting really bright. So let's take a look at how this is doing right now. 5429 at 75% output, and when it comes to 100, ooh, studio is super bright. Everything is super blown out on the camera right now. This is 5540 Kelvin with a TLCI of 98. So you're still getting good color output. The rest of the testing, what I'm going to do is stick to around 25% output. This way, we're not blowing things out too much, and I'm not too much backlight. All right, so the next test, what we're going to do is 5200 Kelvin, and we're going to set this similarly to the last one at 26. In fact, let's do 25% on this one. And we're going to test the color output now. So for this, at 5200, we are getting 5085. It is off by a little bit more than the plus minus 100, just a slight touch more. However, the TLCI is still fairly good. Is this acceptable for what I do? Absolutely. But this is also another reason why any professional that does this will also have a color spectrum photometer on set as well. This way they can measure the color output and compensate accordingly to match all the other lights that they have. Because when it comes to these type of fine tuning, we can't really trust our eyes anymore. So this is at 26 at 4000 Kelvin, and this is pretty much within plus minus 100, 3925. I'm going to go down to 3000 and then up to around 6000 Kelvin in just a moment. So this is the 3000 one, and amazingly is doing really good. This is 3010 Kelvin, so it's pretty much right on. TLCI is still at 98. Let's do 6000 Kelvin and see how we do at 26%. And with this, we are getting 5913. So majority of the times what we're getting is lighting output that is within a plus minus 100, which I consider good enough for my particular workflow. If this is something that is not acceptable for you, I mean, this is something to think about, but I am sharing these test results that are going to get us more close to the result. Now, I have just tested 5500 Kelvin again. I'm able to get 5459, which is a really good number. So I think that once we start to reach that 20% plateau, the lights start to stabilize a lot more when it comes to output, and you are going to get much more consistent color as you go through the range. So that's some of my thoughts about this one. What I'm going to do now is let's go back and turn this light off, and I'm going to turn on my studio lights a little bit. There we go. And let's turn this one on. All right, so interesting enough, two of my studio light that I'm using for accent lighting are the battery powered Wii light, or Viltrox, similar company, but that is Viltrox lighting in a nutshell. Personally for me, I really think that they have a lot to offer in our lighting, and this is an amazing lighting at a really great price point. And based on what I'm testing so far, if you're constantly using your light at low level in 10% output and so forth, it may not be the most accurate, but this is something that I have observed across multiple other lightings anyway. But when it comes to an output that once you really start to reach 20% or more, the color is starting to stabilize and is within a plus minus 100. And not to mention that you have the ability to go in and change the color output on the LED itself to match with any other lights you may have in the studio. Good lighting, a lot of flexibility. I think this is definitely a really good option to consider if you want a powerful light to have in a studio, or even just like an outdoor shoot or something like that, or even for video interview, outdoors, in the shade, midday. So many uses for this. Anyway, if you have any questions or comment about this, leave them below. Give this a like, subscribe, and hit the bell if you're new, and in Art we trust. So this is more of an aftertake. There's one thing that I didn't mention, and that is the fact that when you turn on the LED, you have to do it from the unit first, because if you don't engage it from here to start out with, your app won't communicate with this device. It would consider itself to be in the off state. But now that I have done this, what I can do is simply turn it on and off using my phone app. However, if I just simply turn it off from here, you're going to see a couple things. It says off on the screen and it says bye-bye. It's, you know, it's short of just waving goodbye to you. But even though the screen is semi-on right now, if I try to turn it on and off using the app on my phone, you will see that it's not really engaging with the light whatsoever. So that's another little thing to note about this light. But the moment I press this to turn it on this way and it initialize, I now have full app control over the lighting. And like I said, you can also turn off the fan as well. The fan will pretty much spin up pretty much full speed right away when you turn the light on. So that's another point to consider as well. And you may be able to hear the fan bearing just screeching a little bit right there. And this is going to be the fan on full blast. Not the most scientific way to test out the light, but it's definitely one way for me to demonstrate the sound. It's not really quite as loud. Once you really put this on the stand, you're not going to hear much about it, but it is definitely something to note about this. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. And the one time that I do this, my color meter needs to do a dark calibration because it failed. And I'm hoping this don't fail.